After Yogi Adityanath all urging voters to come out and vote and obviously pitching for their respective parties and the mandate that they have got under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they are seeking this mandate based on the work that they've done in the last 10 years. Varanasi, will it come out and vote in large numbers and give Prime Minister a historical mandate? Let's try and go back to Kritsween and understand from her. Yes, Kritsween.
Yes, good morning to all of you, Anand. Like I said, I'm standing right outside the polling booth where Congress's Ajay Rai, Congress candidate Ajay Rai will be casting his vote. And you were asking me about the voter turnout. It looks quite great early this morning. We saw people much before 7 a.m. already queuing up, and the voting is underway. It's a high-profile constituency. I also want to quickly take in a word from some of the voters here, especially the first-time voter who's cast his vote. Sir, एक second यहाँ आएंगे, sir. Before the first-time voters, this is the man, Anand, who was the first in line, the first voter in this particular polling booth to cast his vote. So quickly, handing over the mic to him, sir. Good morning. आपने वोट डाला, पहले थे नंबर पे थे आप?
जी, पहले नंबर पे थे।
क्या मुद्दे पे वोट डाल रहे हैं इस चुनाव में?
निश्चित रूप से देश का प्रधानमंत्री चुनना है तो राष्ट्रवाद और विकास यही मुख्य मुद्दा है।
मुख्य मुद्दा ये है इस कंस्टिट्यूएंसी में, अगर हम काशी की बात करें, वाराणसी की बात करें, हम अक्सर लोगों से सवाल पूछते हैं कि सांसद के लिए वोट डालेंगे या प्रधानमंत्री का चेहरा देख के वोट डालेंगे, तो वो समस्या तो आपके लिए है नहीं। तो और क्या आपके लिए डिलेमा था और क्या आपने सोचा जब आप वोट डाल रहे थे?
निश्चित रूप से जो देश के प्रधानमंत्री का चुनाव है तो राष्ट्रवाद और विकास ही मुख्य मुद्दा है।
मैम, आपका क्या मुद्दा रहा, क्या आपके दिमाग में था जब आपने वोट डाला?
हमने डाला कि महिलाओं के लिए सुरक्षा और विकास, बाकी हर चीज महिलाओं का ध्यान दिया जा रहा है, इसलिए हम लोग वोट डाले।
ध्यान दिया जा रहा है, विकास हुआ,
विकास। हाँ हाँ,
काशी में परिवर्तन हुआ है कि नहीं, पूछिए।
पिछले बात करने के लिए so the first
last 10 years has there been a transformation in Kashi, and will that actually be rewarded?
There's a man who's taken objection to the fact that I posed a question to someone else. So let me quickly ask him as well. Sir, आप बताइए, वोट डाल दिया?
हाँ मैडम।
किस मुद्दे पे वोट डाला?
मैंने विकास तो था ही। मैंने अजय राय का जो गलियों से वाकिफ है, अब पुरातत्व नगरी है काशी, शंकराचार्य की धरती है, तुलसी कबीर की धरती है। यहाँ पर प्राचीनतम बरकरार रखते हुए आधुनिकतम की तरफ ले जाया जाए, इसलिए मैंने अजय राय को दिया।
अजय राय पिछले 2 चुनाव में भी कैंडिडेट थे पर 3rd पोजीशन में आए, तो अभी कितना कॉन्फिडेंट लग रहा है वो है?
मैं 100% कॉन्फिडेंस हूँ मैडम। मेरा इंटरव्यू आप अजय राय का तब लीजिएगा, मैं स्वर्गीय राजनारायण जी को देख रहा हूँ।
All right,
आप नहीं देख रही हैं।
all right, Kritsween. So there are some. This is the booth where Ajay Rai is going to vote. The interesting part about Kashi, ladies and gentlemen, is that you just walk down there and you hold the mic in front of anybody, and they have an opinion, and a strong political opinion, and they can sit down and do a debate with you anytime, anywhere across Kashi. That's the beauty about Kashi. That's the fun about Kashi too.
Uttar Pradesh is a strangish sort of dilemma, because this is really where the OBC card is going to be tested, especially of the India Alliance. The dominant communities here really are the Yadavs, the Kurmis, the Kushwahas, and therefore you have the Apna Dal and other Rajbhars and all of those castes really exercising influence. The Dalits and the upper castes have their pockets of influence but are not consequential when it comes to, yes, to tilt the balance, yes, but to determine the outcomes, they're not that consequential. But these castes are the ones that play a role.
See, I think the OBC card is not limited only to, and Zakam may have the info on the wall. The fact is, it's a pan-India story. OBCs across the country are more than 45% of the vote share. And if OBCs are more than 45% of the vote share, is the Prime Minister's pitch that they're going to take away your quota and give it to somebody else, take away your rights and give it to somebody else? Is this actually going to make a big difference? Along with, of course,
that's exactly why
the
I was
Mahila
saying,
voter. Yeah.
It's that OBC card, whichever way it cuts, which is on test really today.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that happened in 2019 was that a lot of the Samajwadi Party vote, the Muslim and Yadav vote, transferred to BSP candidates where there was BSP candidates, and that's why the BSP won 2 seats in this belt. Whereas the reverse was not true, certainly not in as much measure. So Dalits were not voting wherever there were SP candidates as much as the SP's voters were voting for the BSP candidates. That was a phenomenon that we saw last time around. This time, one interesting thing that has happened, of course, is that the Samajwadi Party has fielded almost 50% of its candidates are from backward castes. For the BJP, I think it's about 34, 35%. And we were talking about Mayawati. Mayawati has given again 30% tickets to backwards and 30% tickets to Muslims. So again, I come back to this whole thing. Who is she going to hurt? Her voter. Where are they going? Are they going towards the BJP? Are they going away from the Samajwadi Party and the Congress? That's going to be critical in this election.
Zaka,
Again,
anecdotally, what we're hearing from the ground is that the Muslims have decided that they're not going to waste their vote.
Yeah.
So I think that is pretty much pre-decided. The Samajwadi Party looks like the only challenger in even a bipolar contest, especially in eastern UP. So I think the Muslim vote will gravitate towards the Samajwadi Party. I feel that it's the OBC vote here which really determines, and therefore, you were making that interesting point that, look, Mayawati's vote didn't transfer because the Dalits don't really play an influential role.
But here's the question. I'm interrupting you here because when you say Muslims and the OBCs, are you looking at it inclusive of both genders? Or are the women voters going to vote differently? Will they supersede caste there? And because they are a good 49.5 to 50% in a lot of these. So what happens then? Then when we say OBCs and Muslims and Dalits, are we then looking at it from a male-female collective perspective or largely from a male perspective?
A breakdown of turnouts, if you really look at that, suggests that the women voter is very influential category this election once again. In fact, in
phase 5, they had
in
more voters.
Yeah, and overall too, especially in Bengal.
Even in this phase, the women voters are almost equaling the male voters.
We'll have to wait and see by the end of the day whether the women voters overtake the male voters. But in phase 5, both in Bihar and in UP, we saw more women voters.
My question to both of you is this: that when we say Muslims, when we say OBCs, when we say Dalits, it's been largely seen from a male prism because the historical story has been the men drive the polling narrative or the voting narrative. That's changed since 2009. So I'm asking you today, when you say women voters, are you seeing the women rise above caste lines? Then does this MY factor or OBC factor, does it come into play?
Well, Anand, that's a very good point because in the past, let's look at Bengal, for example. A lot of pollsters in 2021 got Bengal wrong because they automatically assumed that the woman voter will perhaps go with Modi. That's because it's happened all across the country, but that didn't actually happen. Therefore, the woman voter this time has become a constituency that everyone is trying to, in whichever way or the other, get onto their side. And therefore, in Bengal specifically, the woman voter has become such a big issue. Sandesh Kholi was, brought to the forefront by the BJP, pressed on all through the campaign. In fact, it so happened that Sandesh Kholi went to the polls in the last
it's going in
this particular
Basirhat is today.
In this, Basirhat is today.
There's news also around
that. So in this particular thing, and therefore it remains such an issue. And of course, the TMC tried to come back.
I'm again asking you this question: when you speak with pollsters and when you look at the numbers, what do they say? Do women vote on caste lines? If they are 49, 45, 50%, do they vote on caste lines or do they vote above caste lines?
One of the things, Anand, and exit pollsters, I'm sure we'll discuss this in the evening. One of the things that exit pollsters find very, very difficult is women, particularly in rural India, do not necessarily, are not comfortable talking to exit pollsters, and therefore it's very difficult to gauge which way women voters have voted. But what we do have evidence of, what we do have data for, is in the last few assembly elections, whether it was Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, women voter turnout was higher than men, and in all of those states, it's the BJP that benefited. And it's not like women only vote for the BJP. In Karnataka, for example, when the Congress won 135 MLAs, it was a women vote which made the significant difference. They voted for Siddaramaiah, they voted for the guarantees. In Telangana, again, Congress, when it won 65 or 66 MLAs back in December 23, again, they voted for those guarantees. So it's not, again, Rahul talked about, in Bengal, women voter was the critical difference in Bengal. They were solidly behind Mamata Banerjee in the 2021 assembly election. Therefore, the point is that the women voter votes differently in different states as well. And it's a very difficult vote bank to gauge.
But do they rise above caste lines? That's
maybe they do.
Question. And will they then diffuse the entire classical, poll connotations of caste-based,
well, this thing about rising, especially when it comes to the BJP voter, I think most of them have risen above caste lines, and we've seen it in just the last round of assembly elections in November, December. That time too, obviously, this entire OBC census card, etc., was played aggressively by the opposition in the hope to sort of make those inroads into the OBC vote bank of the BJP. Remember, the non-Jatavs as well as the non-Yadav castes have moved to the BJP in lock stock. But I just want to bring out a little point. As you go further east, the woman vote does count, and in many constituencies overrides the men, simply because as we go east, there's also migration of men out of constituencies working in the western belts of India, which are supposed to be more industrialized. And that if you really look at the geography of India's sort of industrial map, you will see that the west is where the industries are. A lot of men sort of leave their homes from the east and work in this part of the country, the western part of the country, and therefore a number of women are left in villages manning the fields, etc., and also voting and outnumbering the men in most cases. This is what some other pollsters have also sort of pointed out.
But the percentage of women voters coming out to vote compared to the percentage of male voters coming out to vote, that's seen a steady increase, and they are also defining and deciding the narrative. The larger question is, what do women want?
But
and what
is that
do
out
women
of agency?
think?
What I
And
was
do they
trying to
think,
say,
do they rise beyond those caste lines,
what I'm
community
trying
lines
to
when
say
they go out to vote?
is that out of agency, or is it out of a certain default because of the men leaving large swaths of the eastern part of the country to work in the west? So that's a question that we have to ask
if you look
ourselves.
at the overall turnout amongst the men, the difference is women may be more, but the difference is not as much to say that the entire male or a
No, I'm not
huge
saying
chunk
the
of the
entire,
male
but
population
there
is
is a
migrated. Yeah, but there is this
significant-
argument which you're saying.
dent.
Is there?